that with the start of each meeting, because some of us come and go, because Wednesdays can be a tricky time at lunch, could we start each meeting just recapping the action from last meeting, just so that we're all on the same page? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think for today's purposes, we can do that when we get into the primary discussion item and action item. So if it's okay with you, I'll just officially start the meeting. It's 12:02 on Wednesday, July 15th. This is the Grand County Economic Development Advisory Board. We have Elaine Gisler, Zachariah Levine, Brad Bertosh, Emily Niehaus, Rob Walker, and Lonnie Campbell. Lonnie, are you going to represent the chamber today? Great. So we do have a quorum and we can get started. Before we get to minutes, any ex parte communication or disclosures that anyone feels they need to share? Okay, so let's go straight into the first action item, which is reviewing and approving the minutes from July 8th. Rob Walker sent those out in an email to members. They were also in the packet. Any changes to those? Okay, so I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Emily has provided a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Brad has got the second. Any discussion?
I want to say big thank you to Rob for being the minute man, because so often we sit in calls like these and committees, and it's always the hardest job to find somebody that's willing to do it. And your minutes have definitely helped inform me when I'm not present at a meeting. Thank you for being concise. You're doing a great job. I hope this praise encourages you to continue doing this great job.
I too share that appreciation, and without any further discussion, to keep this meeting concise, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, 6-0 in favor. So the next item is getting back to the Rural County grant application, and specifically finalizing the allocation of funds for the application, so that Elaine and I can finalize the numbers and the content and present that to the county council at their meeting next week, so that they can bless it and then we can get it submitted and funded. So to answer your kickoff question,
Actually, I have a disclosure I need to disclose.
Okay.
I was asked by GoEd to serve on the board or the committee, or I don't even know what we're called,
Sure,
to review applications. And I said, well, I serve on my local advisory board. And they said that that should not be a problem at all, especially this year, as the money is coming to us no matter what. And that there's really no extra money in any pockets. But I did want to disclose to you all, and Rob, please put this in the minutes, that I am serving GoEd to review applications as well.
great.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't see any conflicts of interest there either. The conflict would be, probably on our side if there were one, but it's of a different, level of review and scale. But thanks for sharing that. And so to answer your kickoff question, which was, can we provide a recap of the previous meeting? Basically, leading into last week's meeting, we had rough allocation of funds in the three kind of higher level pots. We had administration, entrepreneurship and business retention and expansion efforts, and then education. And so we spent last week just trying to further break down those pots into sub pots. And, I think our goal was to try to finalize it last week, but there were some differences of opinions and just good discussion that happened. And so here we are 1 week later, and we want to just give a final blessing on the numbers, and then Elaine and I can get the application written up. So with that, I would open it up to others. And I would say I only scheduled this meeting for an hour in hopes that we could actually finish in closer to like a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes if we have to. But that's really just to give the group some motivation to really, just get it done.
So I'm happy to speak first. Are we all united in the 4,000 to the Economic Development Office for the Vista? Is there any concern about that at all?
I don't think so.
So that's a check. Education. So it's 26,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
I want to share a conversation that I had with a friend. His name is Mo Reeder. He runs V School in Salt Lake. If you're aware of the Impact Hub building in Salt Lake, he's the top floor. It's a coding school. It's up to a 4-month program. He is putting together a scholarship program to work with mayors. That's why he contacted me, to work with mayors to provide a scholarship, a local scholarship where he would match 50-50 with a mayor to offer a scholarship to a coder. And then anybody that doesn't get that scholarship can apply for I think he's setting aside $1 million for additional scholarships. And I'm just sharing that because I think that there are educational opportunities in addition to USU that we could and maybe should consider. If it's 26,000, then being broad with, the application could be beneficial.
So I think that there's consensus in the group that the money for education and educational scholarships is not attached to one specific educational venue. So whether it's USU Moab or V School, as long as somebody can draw a clear link between, the course or the program and, an employment opportunity in the Moab area, then I think we would. My opinion is that we should support it. So I started off by saying I think there's consensus, and I ended with, my statement. So that's really just a question mark back to the group to confirm that I'm correct in assuming there is consensus.
I think that criteria that you just stated, the link to job creation in Grand County, is sufficient. Do we want to have a cap per award, or just let it be free?
I don't know that we need to get to that level of detail in this application.
Yeah, I think you're right. We just want to get this thing done.
So, yeah, I think that's for Elaine and this group, over time to determine program policies.
I just want to jump in. I think that I would be much more in favor of the money going to USU Moab. Theoretically, if we were to spend the money so someone can do a coding program, and that money might be leaving the county, if that program is owned by people in Salt Lake City or wherever in the country or the world. So I like the idea of keeping the money in the county and supporting the educational stuff we already have here and local jobs. Not to say that there might be opportunities if he's going to match, but I would say that most of that money should be spent in Moab.
Okay.
Try to get the best deal you can. and see what the results that you can get, and you apply it appropriately. What are the best matches? What are the best job placements? What is the impact here locally? And when we interview multiple players, we might even get a better deal for our money.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that the bulk of what we really need to decide upon is in this second category of BRE and entrepreneurship. We've got $70,000 in that pot, and the current breakdown is $5,000 for the Grand Area Innovation Network, $15,000 for support for minority-owned businesses, $20,000 in COVID-19 relief recovery, to the degree that that could help adaptation and evolution of local businesses. That's noted. $15,000 for tourism infrastructure, job development, and or advertising, and $15,000 for the attraction of diverse businesses and remote workers, and that would be, probably in the form of marketing efforts. So that's the current breakdown of that 70, and that's really what I think the group needs to finalize today. See if that's spread too thin, or if we want to consolidate and consolidate if it is spread too thin, or shuffle it even further. I can share my screen if that's helpful for folks.
For what it's worth, that sounds really good. For minority-owned business, I'm just thinking that we've got some nonprofits that support, that provide services and support for minority populations. So I didn't know if I saw that in the minutes. I didn't know if that would exclude Multicultural Center or Full Circle Intertribal Center from applying for these funds because of the ownership label.
Yeah. Well, I certainly agree with the value statement for those organizations. I mean, our nonprofits in general provide a lot of employment and income in the community, and a lot of just really critical services. I don't know, if we'd run into challenges with GoEd's like policies giving money to, just directly to nonprofits to support their sort of general operations. I'm not sure if that's even
not
what you were
general
suggesting.
operation. Like if they were to develop a workforce program.
Oh yeah, I think that's acceptable.
Okay. Okay.
So we did, I just want to note, we did receive 3 emails today, one from Jasmine, one from John Knight, and one from Sheik, all voting members of this group, all pretty much, stating the same concern, which is we don't want to spread the money out too thin, and, even though we're focused on economic diversification, and we really need to get at that, we need to focus on relief and recovery and the primary economic driver here of tourism. I don't know if they feel like this is spreading the money too thin. They didn't get to that level of specificity. I mean, I think that honestly, like the $65,000 that's allocated towards, these different categories. So everything outside of the gain allocation. I mean, that's relief and recovery money. And it's, a lot of it's probably going to end up supporting businesses that are in the tourism industry. So just, thoughts from the group on that?
Zachariah, is it really, I mean, I look at it, I say that we have 3 buckets: the administration, the BRE, entrepreneurship, and education, and we've carved up our money between those 3 buckets. Now, we have suggested uses for
Yeah.
that money underneath each category. And I think that's what we have suggested. Is there a chance that we can put this in, and if we want to be a little more fungible, or if there's something we don't think we should do because there's other monies available or whatever, can we sort of move it around a little bit under each of the big categories? Will go ahead, let us do that.
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think, to me, this is, if we get the money, which I'm sure we will, this is what we're thinking about how we're going to spend it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where
And
I'm at.
we've narrowed it down that we don't want to really go out of these groups unless there's some real great opportunity. But it's just to give us a guide, is what I look at it as being. Am I correct? Can we do that? Or do we have to nail it down?
No, that's my take as well. I wanted our group to go through the exercise of trying to nail it down a little bit further, especially with a transition of economic development leadership. I wanted Elaine to have more guidance in terms of the administration of these funds, and I wanted the group to have, just more consensus at the outset, like how money. Uh-oh. Can you all see me? I got a weird
I
message.
can see you. And
Yeah, we can see you.
Out on the,
All right.
whatever you put up.
Or do you see this signed out message? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Zachary, I have a question with the COVID relief. I know that there is COVID-19 PPE money from the state that's available, and the application started, or starting. So is there a way that we could have those people apply for that grant funding instead of using it through the 20,000 that we have allocated, and take that and use it for something else? I mean, or is there a different plan for that funding?
I don't think we have a specific plan for that line item yet. And as you and this group develop like program guidelines for each of these pots, you could certainly ask for somebody to confirm whether or not they received funding already through the state's PPE program. I think that's very reasonable to not double dip for like the same thing.
I mean, how do the rest of you feel about that?
Weren't we thinking about using this money as gap money to fill in where, the money that's going to be available from the state doesn't quite work as well, and that we were going to try to be helpful from that standpoint, as opposed to, as Elaine's talked about, applying for a piece of the money.
Well, I will share that because I serve on the GoEd subcommittee for business resources. There is quite a bit of resource for businesses through grant, through the state, just through GoEd. Then there's, state money outside of GoEd for recovery. There's, as we all know, the PPP and the EIDL. I did wonder what everyone thought about, by creating a recovery help bucket. What I assumed was that it would be funding not to just make payroll, but funding to create a new program that would enhance and grow the business, because Corona, turning lemons into lemonade, where they can say, well, this is actually
help finance a pivot. Help finance a pivot.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect. Pivot money.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Which would, probably be over some overhead as well, but.
I would hope that the other thing it would be used for, and maybe this isn't necessary because you guys got everything ironed down, but I'd really like to make sure that every business in Grant County knows exactly what's available,
Mhm.
that they get the help they need to fill out the forms, and that if this money needs to be used to supplement the SBDC or somebody else, or Grant County that's helping that get that word out and get those forms filled in. That was one of the uses I thought the money could be used for.
Mm.
We want to make sure Grant County gets more than its fair
Mhm.
share of relief money.
Yeah, I agree with Emily that we could add a little more detail on the funding. Essentially, that whole bucket, really, besides the $5,000 to gain, that's all going to businesses. I mean, I guess the tourism thing, I'd be in favor of kind of collapsing that all, and we can include priorities for minority-owned businesses within that, but it's essentially giving money to businesses. If there's enough money already for COVID relief out there in the state of Utah through GoEd programs, then yeah, I think we should probably be a little more specific about who we're giving money to and why. I was talking with someone who owns a nonprofit they just started in Moab, and yeah, I mean, this is really changing the dynamic of, she was thinking of kind of getting a part-time job while she started this, but now like those part-time jobs aren't really there. And like, it'd be a situation where, I want to make sure people like her could apply for things, because could it's creating a cool thing in Moab, as opposed to just, not because she wouldn't be eligible for those other programs because she hasn't been in operation. So I like the idea of, whether you want to throw the word pivot in there or new growth aspects, or I think we can make it a separate, don't make it overlap with what's already existing.
Like new business entrepreneurship. That's what she would be, is new business, right?
Yeah. It'd be, a grant to do something new, economic diversification, giving money to a business to help them ultimately create jobs and diversification in Moab, rather than just taking all our money and dividing it up and saying, have you been affected by COVID? If so, apply here and we'll give you some money. I think that's super important, but it sounds like, GoEd already has that program. So let's be creative and do something different that doesn't overlap with what already is existing out there. And I like the idea of, essentially we're adding qualifications. We're making it more difficult theoretically for someone to get the money. We're not just going to say, are you a business in Moab? Here, apply for money. We want to support people who are trying to further the things we care most about, which are economic diversification and so forth.
So what do you think about that, Rob? Then of just consolidating that support for minority-owned businesses into the business development and diversification efforts, and we can put in a prioritization for minority-owned businesses.
I think I don't know what our demographics are in Moab. I think it's pretty low in terms of minority owned businesses. So I think it might be hard to just force a certain number to get to. They could certainly have first priority, or there could be a money set aside for them that if it's not used in a certain period of time would go to the other bucket. Business remote work development and diversification efforts. And then I guess I would also, yes, I'm fine with that, Zechariah. And if I could, make another point on this paragraph, I guess I kind of agree with Caitlin. I sort of don't like the idea of spending money on advertising, just given we were aggressively talking to the state to try to change how we could use TRT for a long period of time. So I don't know. I think it just sort of sends the wrong message. And I think we could ultimately just support businesses that are being hurt by lack of tourism. right now without, yeah, I guess I'm not in favor of that. I'll go with the group on it, but I would move that $15,000 into something else.
That, I mean, I'll be honest that I'm kind of in a similar boat. I'll vote with the group to give everyone some context. This line item was sort of grew out of conversations regarding the lack of funds available for the travel council to do any marketing and advertising, and a realization that tourism is still the big breadwinner in our community, and what we can do to stimulate drive to market visitation is important, because the visitation supports a lot of the other businesses that do tend to have more kind of broad support in the community. But that said, I am of the camp that our primary focus needs to be on diversification. So for whatever it's worth.
I would move that out of there. I don't think that 15,000 for marketing is going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
And I think if we move it into that larger area of trying to help the businesses, diversification, help each of our businesses, and I think if we keep the 70,000 there, isolate the gain, but then put and elaborate on some of the uses for that funding and list all of those possibilities in there. But I don't think the advertising is going to make one bit of difference.
Well, and so one possibility is that we move this 15 up to the COVID-19 relief and recovery pot. Emily's shaking her head no.
Move it to the business remote work.
Yeah. Okay,
so I think that's what Rob was saying, right?
Yeah.
I'm with Emily on that.
Here's a suggestion, guys. What if we take all of those three line items from row 11 to 13, and we combine them? Essentially, like Zachariah, your initial grant program that you did was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was kind of like, most people all got approved, right? It was like a very high approval rate. What we could do is, we could use this bucket to, you'd have some either subcommittee or Grand County Council, I don't know, who's the right person to do it. People could apply for funding, and then it'd be a little more selective. It'd be much more selective. And we would choose businesses and organizations, nonprofits, for-profits, to give a total of up to whatever, $5,000 to anyone for efforts that align with our priorities in the county for diversification, for job growth, and so forth. And that would be almost kind of like maybe irrespective of COVID-19 relief, because in the idea being that those programs already exist at the state. There isn't a lot of money. That would be my recommendation or thought, if people agree with that, maybe.
The only thing I'm leery about with all of this, and just because I've been pretty heavily involved in the PPP, is what happens come January when the money's already been forgiven. It's already been allocated and forgiven, and these guys' cash flow dry up. I think there still needs to be some type of COVID-19. I'm not as familiar with any of the GoEd grants or anything though, so I don't know what's out there for that.
So I do know that several of the grant programs with GoEd are able to be, so a business can specify that their commercial rental assistance, so that's 2 months free rent, could actually be applied to December, January. And so there is flexibility within those grant programs to look ahead at what happens in January. And GoEd's very aware, especially for us in Moab with our seasonality, that that flexibility on those programs is available, and it is. But Lonnie, I share that same concern that it's going to be a bitter cold.
Yeah, because I've kind of felt all along February's when our town's going to get hit the hardest.
Well, what if we incorporated COVID-19 relief as, just like we're going to prioritize support for minority-owned businesses, We could also prioritize things like new business formation, economic diversification, and we could prioritize, businesses that have been affected by COVID-19 and are doing things to mitigate that. Like we don't want to be giving money to a business that is doing really well, that just wants to like grow in one area, but they're already like doing great. I mean, it's not bad. It's just that should be lower priority than someone who's like a cool business in town. For instance, like, the Desert Sun Ceramics, like sort of went out of business and they got like sold to someone else. But it's like, that was something where was affected. A small amount of money could have kept things going more. It turned out everything was fine, but we could just add that COVID-19 as another prioritization of someone who's affected in their application to our program. They could talk about whether they've applied to GoEd and so forth, or if they were rejected.
Okay, I'm going to throw a little rain on your parade. I think that if I was looking at this budget, and I'm going to be the one that's going to sign off on it for GoEd, right? Like Emily's going to be there. Emily's going to have to answer a big question. How come you're not putting all your money into tourism? We need that tourism. We get a lot of money for the state. I mean, that's a big impact for both the state and for Grant County. Why isn't everything in tourism? Okay, she's got to sit down and talk about that. But you need to get that done now. And I think she's going to have to fight that. So I think tourism has to be acknowledged. It's where the money is now.
Well,
and in this in-market thing, you got to do that. So you've got to
well,
acknowledge.
I mean, Brad, though,
you got to acknowledge it.
I don't think
we're going to be getting money.
I don't think that's going to be the
Yeah,
case.
Brad, like, I mean, Elaine can speak to this, but I mean, as there are tourists in town, there is generating TRT right now. Last year, there was 1.8 million. It's going to be a lot less this year, but it's going to be a lot more than $15,000 or whatever.
I get it. So we want, but they know that this is tourism. And so tourism's been affected and it's perception. Okay.
Yeah. So you know what?
The other perception you have is the community. If I own those hotels, if I own those restaurants, if I own those retail shops, and I see that you're getting money to diversify and get us out of the business that I've been doing for the last 20 years, I might be a little annoyed. And so I want to know that you're also taking care of me as well. So it's about perception as much as reality. And I'm not saying that, Rob, that you're wrong. I'm just saying that you got to fight those perceptions because you don't want to have people, you want everybody on board that you can. And one of the ways to mitigate that is to make damn sure that we get all these other programs out to everybody that can qualify for them, that they go and they fill out and they qualify it. It's important that we get as much money flowing into this market because we need it now. We're going to really need it in the winter.
Brad, I don't think we have to like worry about things that aren't current. Like GoEd hasn't said anything to us about we need to require anything, right? So if they come back to us and say, we'd like you to change your buckets, we can then deal with that. But I think right now we're talking about what we want, we're not living based on what we think someone else might react. We're probably going to get allocated this money. So if you want to include tourism, that's fine, but that's your opinion. And if everybody else also wants to include it.
Well, yeah. And I would say that sometimes we get caught up when we say diversification, because while we have diversification among several sectors, it's also good to see diversification within tourism. And so then it could be, for example, we've got an emerging astronomy tourist company. So that's diversification within tourism. And I could actually see them applying for this grant with us. But I think all of these questions or these comments have been so smart to inform basically what we have on the spreadsheet right now. Zachariah, you did say time is of the essence for you today. I'm wondering, maybe I should just make a motion to approve the breakdown as per what we are seeing on the spreadsheet. So Rob, I don't know if you can do a screenshot.
So to clarify what I would do, I mean, I'm just trying to like kind of track the conversation as it's evolving. And so what I'm showing up here, just so everyone's clear, is like, we've got this kind of current breakdown that we went in with that I've highlighted, 20, 15, and 30, based on Rob's comment of like just consolidating that into one bigger pot with these different priorities. for how businesses could apply for grants up to $5,000. That would make it a $65,000 pot for grants direct to business to support these, 4 priorities: industry diversification, even within tourism, job creation, minority-owned businesses, and COVID-19 relief and recovery. And I think that Elaine and this group could further refine program guidelines, for that 65,000. But that's 13 grants, lucky 13, that we could give out if everyone applied for up to 5,000. So
I will make that motion that we move forward with the specified dollar amount as presented by Zachariah and the spreadsheet.
I will second the motion.
Can I have a
Okay.
slight discussion before we?
yeah, well, hold on. Let me just get that on the record. So we've got a motion from Mayor Niehaus to put forward a recommendation that includes the following pots of money: 4,000 for administration, 70,000 for business retention and expansion and entrepreneurship, and 26,000 for education. Each of those pots being broken down a little bit further in sub pots. That was seconded by Brad Bertosh. We'll go into discussion. Because you made the motion, Emily, if you have anything to add, you get to start.
I just want to say I'm always friendly to friendly amendments.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so I just have a few, okay, so the only things I'm sort of unclear about are, what Gain's gonna do with that money. If they can't really hold events, all they have done in the past is holding events. Maybe it's broad enough where they can give some grant with that, then I'm cool with it. So maybe Zachariah, you can clarify that. And the second one is just under education. I'd like to, maybe have a little more, I guess we can do this later, would be, where that money can go to. Like, again, I wouldn't want it to go to like some for-profit education institution that's outside of Moab.
I think we could discuss those later when it's appropriate. But I think to get this thing moving, we ought to just go ahead and pass this. The only thing I was going to add is language. The gain is really, in my mind, and it's okay if it's not in your mind, it's really to build the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Moab, in Grant County.
Right.
And those buzzwords like economic ecosystem, maybe they have changed, but I think they're still the buzzwords of the day. So
yeah, but what's the money going to be used for? Like, why do they need money for that?
Well, it depends on what you're going to do, and we got to talk about that. And if we don't use all the money, that's fine. And you're right. I think there's some ways we can leverage and may not need to use the money, can roll it elsewhere.
So, yeah, I'll throw out an example for spend the Gain. So I attended the Gain mixer. I don't know, what was that, 3 years ago? No, like
a year. Yeah.
Couple months.
There's not going to be mixers, right?
No, but I felt that was very helpful. I've been talking with different entrepreneurs as this pandemic has forced us all inside, and we've kind of made our own little maker spaces and had our own little brainstorms of what we want to do. And I actually have a handful of people with like maker ideas, one of which is a canned beverage. And so I've been on the lookout for kind of a mentor / advisor for bringing product ideas to market. Blacksmith International is a company that helped found Silicon Slopes East. And so I was speaking with Brian, who is the owner of that company, about potentially doing a webinar series for entrepreneurs in Moab to kind of take their ideas to the next level and what it means to, take a product to market. And then I said, and then you build a cohort, you do this like class, and then you go on a river trip or something. So hopefully we'll be able to gather, you know, we can gather in groups of 10 or less with physical distancing. Like that's okay. And I could see a cohort, you know, whether it's that or anything else, like the gathering of a cohort, even under current guidelines. And I'm hopeful that we can still do that, just at, you know, smaller numbers.
So I would add, you know, I think it's just really important to keep some money in that pot. You know, even if it's to pay somebody to contribute to a virtual event, you know, whether it's an industry advisor or it's to support like incentives to get people to participate in the GAIN event. You know, it's good to have some money in there. I also think it's, you know, just a little bit unknown what the next year looks like. And so, you know, I'd prefer to square away some money for GAIN to know that it's there. You know, if we can host events, even small events, while I think it's, you know, there are real questions about whether that's feasible or not, I'd rather put some money there and put it towards something else if we decide that we don't use it, than to not have any money if we do come up with some good ideas on what to do. So
Yeah, I mean, I'd be in favor of reducing that figure, maybe to $2,000 or something like that, and putting the rest in the other bucket.
okay.
In the bigger bucket?
In the big $65,000 bucket. Just seems like I don't think there's a good way to spend $5,000 at GAIN. That's clear to me.
Yeah.
When you can't host large events.
I might have missed something last week, but the only thing that I see concern with that I think brings a lot of value to this town is the business summit. Is $3,000 really enough to actually, I mean, by the time, if we want to bring in any big name companies, by the time we pay food, lodging, everything for them, plus get a venue, could we contribute more to the business summit?
So I think, you know, perhaps what you missed last week is that there seems to be, you know, consensus that hosting an in-person big event is unlikely in 2021.
Yeah.
And the 3,000 was kind of set aside to be seed money for a virtual event if the folks that organize the business summit want to try to pull that off. So, and
Well,
I would
for
say
what
for
it's-
both the business summit and GAIN, you know, we're going to have to leverage those funds with contributions from other sources as well. So just to keep us moving.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'm happy to take Rob's friendly amendment and change the numbers to reduce GAIN to 2 and add it to the 65, which would then make it 67. Is that right? No.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. Brad,
Well,
you
68. Are you saying reduce the GAIN to 2,000 or 3,000?
did you say 2 or 3, Rob?
Said 2, but pick a number you'd like. I think it makes sense for it to be less than the business summit.
I think 2 is, yeah, 2 is fine.
Okay.
Brad, you seconded, are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, that doesn't perfectly follow Robert's rules the way we did that, but I think, you know, we can
Call the
proceed.
question.
Yeah, Zachariah, I feel like we already, didn't we, Emily, like 2 meetings ago, made a motion. We approved all these figures, I thought already, the buckets.
The larger buckets. The larger buckets. we did.
Yes, the larger buckets have been approved.
Yeah.
This is
Just
just
at
the
this point.
details
Yeah.
within the
So,
budget.
okay, so I'll just say the motion on the table is to approve these larger buckets with the change that the GAIN initiative is going to be reduced from 5,000 to 2,000, with a concomitant increase in the Business Diversification and Development Fund up to 68,000. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous for your records, Rob. Okay. We're there, at least for this exercise.
Beautiful. Brad, you have a very cute dog.
Thank you.
Do we have an application process for GAIN? Have we created a template that people will fill out for the grant funding? Is there a?
It's not grant funding really. It's to support the efforts of the GAIN initiative. So it's not like it's a competitive. I mean, GAIN to this point has not been set up as like this pot of money, for competitive funding.
Right.
It's more to like, I mean, to date we've just hosted events, and the future of GAIN, really the sky is the limit, and it still has a long way to go before it sort of realizes its potential.
And for the other grant funding that you had given out earlier this year,
We did have an application for those.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, so we could easily adapt that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elaine, your internet is the pits.
I know. Let me get that to the county. Thank you.
All right. Do you need a motion to adjourn?
No, well, technically no, because we've gotten through our agenda, but I just want to say that I don't have a meeting scheduled for next week, and we don't have a meeting scheduled after this one. But as I've said in all of our previous meetings, while this rural county grant application was the primary impetus for creating this advisory board, we have a much larger charge, which is to support Elaine, to support the city and the county and the chamber and the other partner organizations, and making our economy more resilient. And so we do need to, I want to keep that in mind. And Elaine, perhaps you as taking over economic development formally for the county, and myself as the chair of this group, we can kind of work together on setting the next meeting, and maybe when you feel like you're in the flow a little bit and have your feet underneath you in terms of economic development, that would be a good time, like in the next, I don't know, month or two, maybe a couple of months out, month out, I don't know, whatever feels appropriate.
So we just have to get past Tuesday with the council meeting for them to give their blessing. And then maybe we go from there. We'll see what we encounter on Tuesday. And then maybe we can determine what the next steps will be. How does that sound?
Works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I'll call this meeting to an end. And thank you all for the sustained interest and commitment to getting us these numbers.
Thank you. It's been nice to work with all of you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well,
Good
it's
feedback.
going to continue. So we'll see y'all soon.
I'm excited.
Good.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.